delighted to introduce the moderator, Maya Palmer, who's innovation editor at Sifted, which is a news organisation backed by the Financial Times. Over to you, Maya. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for staying. This is kind of the last but one session, so it's great that everyone's lasted this long. And I feel as if this is almost, we've got a duty to kind of try to sum up and bring together some of the themes that we've already been hearing about. I think that this question of, are we investing in the right things? Are we, how do we sustain interest in these for the long term? After everything with COP26 going on at the moment, there's absolutely no doubt that we're living in a moment when everyone is super enthusiastic about ESG investment. Maybe more the E than the S and the G. We could talk about that a little bit, about whether we're overemphasizing that. But, I think there probably has never been a moment that it's been easier to get a sort of budget for doing your, ESG venturing than now. And in preparation for this, I had a look at there was a recent PwC survey. It's similar to many others that have been done in this field, but sort of 64% of all corporate directors think that ESG is tied to their company strategy, and that's up from 15% last year, which I'm not sure which one I think that 2020 number seems low, but it shows the direction of travel. There's definitely enthusiasm. The question for me is, how do we invest in the right stuff? Are we just going for the shiny thing that looks good in the press release, or are we going for things that are really impactful? And no better about panel to talk about this great variety in the voices. So we have Tracy Carr, who's the CEO of EcoShaper, and Tracy, as I understand it, you make a sort of app and a software that basically keeps companies honest about what the carbon and the climate footprint really is of what they're doing, and down to each employee almost.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for inviting me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of EcoShaper, and we are essentially an accounting software for the environmental ESG standards, and that covers the entire ecosystem that a company touches, so suppliers, employees, and their own emissions. So it's a large project, but worthy, because our mission and our goal is to engage every single person in becoming more conscious, taking more environmental actions, and moving and really shifting towards those goals.
And have you noticed a difference in sort of interest in the software that you're offering? I mean, is it easier to do a deal at this moment, or is it much the same as uphill battle?
That's an interesting one, and yes, I'm very lucky to be in the Set Squared incubator, so we've had a lot of support from there, we've had a lot of support from the UK government, but there is still this, they call it traditionally in startups, the valley of death. You create the prototype, but you then need the engagement of the enterprises that you want to sell to in that kind of experimental stage. How does it fit? How do we integrate it? Which parts do you want, which parts don't you want? And that, I've got a background of leadership development with big corporates in FTSE 100 companies and around the world, actually. So I know lots of companies of the right type for us to sell to, but they still find it really difficult to engage at that experimental stage. It's just the corporate strategy.
Because you're just a little bit too early, and they kind of want to see a few more proof points. But then you can't get the proof points without getting those first customers. So you're sort
chicken and egg.
Yeah, catch 22.
That part hasn't changed.
Yeah. So finding a way to break through that is going to be crucial.
Yes, absolutely.
So also on the panel, so Christoph Berkel, who is one of the co-founders and CEO of Brill Technologies, which is just, you can tell us a little bit more, but just the sort of the shorthand is, it's technology that makes, it gets more life out of batteries. I think you were telling me before that you can change a sort of a 5 to 6 year lifespan, possibly into a 10-year lifespan for a battery, which would be amazing from an impact point of view, because it means that, we don't have to use as many of these and get the headache of recycling and having to find more lithium, etc. But it's probably not the most eye-catching part of the battery industry. So again, I mean, how are you finding it? Are you finding a lot of interest in the company? And are you finding it a bit of a battle to convince customers that you also need to do some of this more background stuff in optimizing technology as opposed to a sort of really headline-grabbing investment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. Yeah, at Brill Power, we're a spin-out from Oxford University, and we have come across a way of significantly improving the lifetime performance, safety, and sustainability of batteries. We work a lot with lithium-ion batteries, but other chemistries as well, just through the controls, designing the control system and the software that runs the batteries to provide that step change improvement that you just mentioned, Mayan, in getting the battery from currently of around about 5 to 6 year expected life in a passenger electric vehicle to break that 10-year life mark that we need to get to be on par with internal combustion engines. So yes, you may not find that as sexy an innovation as some of the new shiny battery chemistries themselves. And yes, there is a challenge of getting this integrated into our vehicles, into our energy storage systems at home, because there is a bit of a conflict between OEMs wanting to get electric vehicle storage systems out the door as fast as possible because the market demands it and the consumers buy it. But then there's the danger of what happens downstream. What happens if all these electric vehicle batteries need one replacement? And if the electric vehicle battery costs about 40% of the total vehicle, the consumer is not able to foot that bill. And the OEM, I'm sure, won't like to deal with that either. Letting alone the issue of the piles of waste that we'll have to deal with of lithium-ion batteries, including lots of hazardous materials in their manufacture, but also in sourcing that take a lot of energy and a lot of materials to be created. So we think it's essential to make the absolute most of that technology, to use it to its absolute best, and with just a small difference in the control system that we've developed. This is something that we can do right here, right now, today, without a new shiny chemistry and without a new fundamental science breakthrough. So a very exciting field to be in, but we have to consolidate the interests between the OEMs producing the equipment and the users wanting that life, wanting that performance, and wanting that sustainability.
So in terms of when you are talking to OEMs about this, what's the kind of main pushback that you get from them?
Yes, there is the comfortable thing to do is using a legacy technology that is driven by capital cost. So the electronics that are currently in batteries are very low cost commodity components that have been produced for lithium-ion batteries, for example, since the 90s, since batteries were brought on the market, and haven't fundamentally changed. So there is, it requires a change in adapting this new technology, and the trick here is to persuade OEMs to look less on a CapEx basis and look more on a total cost of ownership and total impact basis. And that is a dialogue that we are continuously having and something that we need to succeed in getting this to market.
And Paolo, you're nodding. So obviously Paolo Abajo from Henkel Technologies, who we've heard from you earlier today. So I know you're very immersed in this. But fill us in a little bit on the corporate side of this in terms of how are you thinking about particularly the ESG investments that you're making? Again, is it that do you feel that CapEx total cost of ownership conversation that Christoph alluded to, is that a live one at Henkel as well?
It is, absolutely. So we have basically two large topics when it comes to sustainability for Henkel Adhesive Technologies. I mean, there are, of course, more topics, but you have to, as any startup, we also need to focus on something, otherwise we don't get anything accomplished. So energy generation is for us a big topic from two perspectives. One perspective is to get the energy for our plants. And as we are part of the chemical industry, I mean, this is quite energy intense. We are right now generating electrical power and steam by incinerating natural gas in our own power plants. We will see if that is a sustainable model or if we need to rethink that approach. And on the other side, we are also dealing a lot with e-vehicles and the batteries for that. We are not producing the batteries, but our topic actually is, and this is why I found this fascinating what you're doing, our topic is the thermal management materials for batteries. So we are concerned about that batteries that could heat up too much and then in the end could burn. So this is why we produce thermal management materials for that, knowing that maybe a software solution, if it is equally working, might be a real alternative, because you don't need then to move all these complicated materials into the battery, and you have in today's batteries sensors per se, so they are communicating to the outside anyways, and then you can probably also catch these signals with your software and then deal with that. So I think that's a fascinating concept. And the second big topic for us is packaging. Half of Henkel is fast-moving consumer goods, so we are packaging our consumer goods in something, and so we have some responsibility for selling goods in packagings. And on the other side, in the adhesive technologies area, we are providing adhesives and other materials to make packagings. And also there, we are now more thinking about recycling opportunities for those packaging, so they can give our customers the right recycling technology at hand. We're also thinking about bio-based packagings, and our fast-moving consumer good colleagues also think about packaging avoidance. So these are all two large areas where we are currently focused on.
And if you can fill us in a little bit on the sort of internal politics of this, I just wonder how much is the temptation to, of senior leadership to jump on, things that look good in headlines versus things that would actually make more impact, and how do you manage that?
So Henkel is a relative conservative company. We are 147 years old. We have a very solid culture, and it's a very fact-based culture. So I think we would never hop on these headlines. So we will always really examine certain technologies and check out if it's really providing the benefits they're supposed to provide, and if those benefits could be also transferred into, that we are benefiting with our products from that kind of technology. And there's a thorough, shouldn't say due diligence, but a thorough investigation about how real and how scientific is that really, and how differentiated is that technology also.
I suppose you have the benefit of not being such a kind of consumer household name. If you were a Unilever or something, then it's very easy to be in the spotlight and to feel the pressure to kind of be making big gestures. Whereas actually, if you're a little bit less sort of in the public eye, you can take your time.
Yeah, the pressure is there. The pressure is definitely there for the packaging.
Yeah.
I mean, also for us. But you need to make sure that if you, for example, you co-develop or if you financially support a certain recycling technology, for example, that this recycling technology is really changing the world and it's not just greenwashing. And this is where we are very carefully looking at. I think we are in these decision processes, we are not very fast because it's a very diligent decision process. But once we are decided, we are actually following up on these things also from the top management onwards. So it's a quite transparent process then afterwards.
And we should definitely touch on that sort of accounting. I wonder, Tracy, whether you can jump in there in terms of, the clients that you work in. I just wonder whether you're learning anything interesting from the process of actually helping them calculate their impact.
We're still in the experimental stage, so we've got a lot of interest from corporates in terms of, they're waiting for the product. We've got to get over that valley of death. But I absolutely agree with what Paolo is saying, that whether it's the corporation or the venture capital, it's got to be in integrity. And I think the nature of where we've come from historically in terms of those headlines that you talk about, Mayor, it has been about aligning with the right projects, having the right look, the right press releases, particularly in relation to rounds and so on, which can divert the startup away from what it's actually doing? And are you actually out there trying to raise money and get headlines? Or are you actually building a product that's going to make a difference? And I appreciate you have to manage both, but sometimes it can be a distraction.
And because I guess my question is about how to keep the corporation sort of interested in these projects, because we know that even at the best of times, even when it's something that is, just a purely beneficial for-profit type of business, companies can then backtrack on that a million times, let alone when it's something that's a little bit experimental and it's an ESG initiative and so on. So I just wonder whether you have thoughts on how do you, again, with is software like yours kind of going to be a good way of sort of accounting and making sure that, once we get past, once COP has blown over and everybody's gone back to business as usual, how are we still going to make sure that we're making that progress in year 2, year 3, year 5, year 7,
I think there's 2 points I wanted to make on that. I was really pleased to hear over the last couple of days that we're moving towards accounting on impact, because that has been missing. Nature is an asset. We don't value it as an asset. The only way it's an asset is if you chop a tree down and burn it. Mm-hmm. And so bringing impact into the accounting process is going to make a big difference. And the second point is, I believe that we've got momentum. And so the employees want to do something. It's not just about the company, it's about the employees, it's about every individual wanting to take action. But awareness is still low. Lots of people want to do something, but they don't know what to do. And software can help. Software can help with the data. Software can help with push notifications to give you great ideas. It can keep you engaged with gamification. There's so many things that you can do. And that's how you change culture. That's how you change the world.
Yeah, and so you change it at the top and also throughout the company, and that's sort of the point of EcoShaper in a nutshell, I guess.
Yes.
Christoph, on a slightly different tack, I just wondered whether you could tell us a little bit about what your plans are in terms of how quickly can you scale what you're doing. I know you're sort of, I think, in the midst of the next funding round and obviously have plans. It's still early stage for you, but can you get this across to, sufficient number of OEMs to start making an impact?
Yes, that's the big question, isn't it? Yeah, we have started getting our technology out into the market as of this year. We've launched our first product in October. That is a control system for stationary energy storage, something that could go into your home and store solar electricity from solar photovoltaic panels. And this is out there in the market. We've got first orders for it, and we are in parallel working on our electric vehicle product and technology that takes longer to get to market, but we believe by around about 2026 we should be able to get that into mainstream OEMs. It takes a while to get mass adoption for new automotive components, but we have made good progress with R&D projects with companies like Aston Martin, Delta Cosworth, Empty Power, all based in the UK, of showcasing the tech, showcasing its capabilities. It's not just extending life or improving sustainability. It's also got intrinsic performance and safety benefits that are very critical for OEMs of electric vehicles especially. So they've been proven in the lab and demonstrated on the tech itself, but now the product development process begins, and that does we have to jump through a few hoops in terms of regulatory compliance, adoption onto a product development lines. So for automotive, it's going to take a while. There's a few niche applications that we can get to market sooner. There's commercial vehicles which have even more aggressive duty cycles than passenger electric vehicles. Your own car might only be used about 80-90% of the time, but a forklift or a heavy good vehicle might be used 80-90% of the time. So that will really require a very resilient battery, and that is something that we might be able to get into the market sooner. But this is to give you an idea of how we think we can scale.
So, but 2026 is coming soon. Paolo, I wonder whether you can talk a little bit about how does Henkel then, measure progress on this? Again, that whole question of how do we keep this going beyond the initial investment and then keep going with it for the next 10 years?
So we definitely measure the progress of a certain technology. We measure the decarbonization, the CO2 reduction, energy savings, whatever the right measurement is. And I think those software solutions are for us super critical, but more critical is how you feed the data into these software solutions. So for us, the point is that we have, for example, we talk about packaging. When you have food packaging, it's a lamination of plastic and an aluminum layer. We are the market leader of that lamination adhesive. And we are now providing a recycling technology for that to our customers too. But we would like to also learn, we can make our product in a more sustainable way, that we use less energy and less materials in order to make the material itself, but we are also interested in how this material is then saving energy at our customers, because maybe the drying times are shorter, the drying temperatures are lower, something like that. And also, this is equally true on our supplier side, so we really would like to have a more end-to-end view on the impact of our products, and this is where software solutions are super important. The trick is where to get the data in order to feed these software models. So our customers are sometimes a bit reluctant to provide the data because they think they are opening up too much know-how about their own process, and that's sometimes also true for the suppliers, although the suppliers are not that difficult. Normally it's really the customers who are reluctant to open up the data, but I think sooner or later we need to come to that we create some transparency about energy consumption, CO2 emissions and so on in these different process steps, and then we have a really end-to-end measurement of what the situation is.
You'd have the whole life cycle, really.
Yes.
But at the moment, you just don't have enough data to get
We have that sometimes. So we have customers who are opening up their processes and their data, and then we can feed our models with that data, and there we have that, but not in all cases.
Yeah. And then, again, internally, you have certain targets that you have to reach, and are they kind of reviewed, every year? Or?
It's the same like with the technology evaluation. So we take some time until we commit to a certain target, but once we are committed to the target, we really follow up on that. So, we are 62% of the company is owned by the Henkel family. They have a very long-term view on that company. They have a view until 2050 and beyond. Top managers sometimes are a little bit more short-sighted. They think they are in that position 2 or 3 years, so they don't. And Henkel made a pledge to be carbon neutral until 2040. So these managers might think, okay, I'm here for the next 2 or 3 years. Doesn't really matter if I don't make progress, because the person after me should then deal with all that. And the family and also the culture is that way, that they are making sure we are on that track to be carbon neutral in 2040, and that we are making now the right decisions and taking the right actions in order to get to that target in 2040.
And I think when we were talking before this session, you were telling me that there can be very real consequences if people are not sticking and managing to meet those targets.
Yeah, the company is not very tolerant if you are too lazy on these terms. I mean, sustainability for us is very serious, and it's of course serious because I truly believe, and also the company truly believes, that if you're not acting in a sustainable, responsible way, that you probably as a company won't survive much longer. But it's also this family-owned approach. I mean, they feel a certain responsibility for the society. This is also why we talk about, when we talk about the business side, and we talk about all these things I mentioned, but when we talk about the family, they are also very much into social entrepreneurship, social impact projects. So as employees, we have, for example, the opportunity to round down our salary. So if the salary is, 6,829.38 euros, then we can donate these 8.39 euros to charity through a particular software. So we allow the company to round down to the next 10 euros, and the company is then donating that. And normally the company is also doubling that amount, what I'm donating as an employee. For me, that up to 10 euros is not a lot of money, but if you take into account we have 53,000 employees, that can be a very significant amount.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's some of these things which are a little bit less, prominent. I definitely didn't know about this initiative at Henkel, but I guess, it's the cumulative things like that which would end up having a bigger impact. Now, I'm conscious that we're due to finish, soon, and everybody probably wants to hear, Jim's concluding remarks. But I just wondered whether there were any last thoughts from you guys in terms of, again, just how do we maximize this moment, but avoid getting too caught up in the hype? I don't know, Tracy, I suspect you alluded to the fact that maybe just more corporates need to just take the plunge and help a startup like you sort of develop something and not be too shy about.
Yeah, I think more collaboration is critical. I think there obviously has been a lot going on here over the last couple of days, which is really encouraging to see. The COP26 has really helped because people who weren't aware, they couldn't have avoided it in the last few days, so they probably are now. All of that helps in raising awareness. Then it's about implementing the solutions, because once you've raised awareness, you've got to give people a solution. They're looking for a solution. I think that's where we're at now. Yeah. We've got to provide the solution so that people can actually do something and make that positive difference. Yeah. That's a culture change.
Yep, hopefully it will come in. And Christoph, apart from, invest in this better technology, but, again, is there a message, I guess, to the sort of the corporate clients that you're looking to participate in? What's the best way to maximize impact right now?
Yeah, I think when you look at adopting a new technology, don't just take the short-term view of minimizing capex, of producing something as cheaply as possible and just get it out there. Take the long-term view. Make sure you take responsibility and ownership for the lifetime of the products that you produce, especially if they are core technologies that the energy transition relies on, and not produce and extract valuable materials in vain, not use energy in vain. We can't risk to give these new and transformative technologies a bad rep. We rely on them to lead us through the energy transition. So make sure you develop them in a responsible way when you select those technologies.
Yeah. And Paolo, any last thoughts? I think one of the important things you said was really about that data sharing, which is that if we could have a better view, is to your point as well, Christoph, that the whole lifetime energy consumption of something would be something that would be very worth us understanding better as a society.
Yeah, we definitely need to improve on how we collaborate together and how we are together pursuing certain targets and certain technology and certain progress. And I think if everybody would act in his or her responsibility and change what his or her can do in real life, I think we would be much further progressed. And if we don't spend the time to find excuses why we can't do certain things, let's focus on the things we can do. And I think that's already big progress. Sometimes I have the imagination we are sitting in a car driving 100 kilometers per hour towards a wall, and we are for some reason not hitting the brake. So it's...
Yes, that's a good thought to finish on. Do what you can do. Don't focus on the things that you can't. But now we're well and truly out of time. So it's only remains for me to thank the panel. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Paolo, for sharing those thoughts.